The city stirred awake under the soft glow of early morning. Horns blared in the distance, mingling with the rhythmic chatter of neighbors greeting one another along the narrow alleys. Between the high-rise buildings that scraped the sky, the scent of fried delicacies wound its way through the streets, curling into every corner and alleyway. It was a smell of tradition, of heritage baked and fried over generations, refusing to vanish despite the encroaching modern world. At the edge of a narrow alley, a small stall stood like a lone tree in a bustling savanna. Behind it, Abina moved with the precision of one who had danced this dance for years. Her hands worked tirelessly, flipping sizzling dough, sprinkling spices, and arranging trays of golden treats with care. She was strict, every movement deliberate, every glance sharp, as a command in the world itself to obey her rhythm. Yet beneath the sternness, there was devotion, a love measured not in gentle words, but in discipline and sacrifice. A little girl lingered nearby. Amma, with her wide, curious eyes, watched her mother closely. She noticed a slight tremor in her mother's hands, the careful way she arranged each delicacy, the furrow of her brow as she greeted customers with a mixture of warmth and firmness. Amma's small voice broke the hum of the street. "Mother, do you have to be so strict today?" she asked softly, tugging at the hem of her worn dress. Abina's gaze flicked to her daughter, sharp as a spear yet carrying the weight of unspoken worry. "Amma, life is not gentle. You must learn early if you are to survive." Amma lowered her eyes, her small heart aching at the harshness hidden in her mother's words. Around them, neighbors began their daily routines. The sound of drums echoed from a distant market, a reminder of the stories and songs that had guided generations. The rhythmic beating seemed to whisper of wisdom and patience, yet the city's modern rhythm, honking cars, shouting vendors, the clatter of footsteps, competed fiercely with the old ways. A vendor nearby called out, waving a basket of fruit, "Mangoes!" Sweet as the sun. The smell of fried dough mingled with the sharp scent of citrus and spices, creating a symphony of scents that spoke of both heritage and survival. Amma inhaled deeply, letting the aroma wrap around her like a familiar blanket. She loved the smell of home, but it also reminded her of the tension that always hovered near her mother's eyes. Abina moved to serve a customer, her hands swift and precise. She balanced plates with a grace that belied the bustling chaos around her. Her voice rang clear over the morning noise. "Here, take it carefully. Do not spill." The crowd shifted, the city breathing around the small stall. Children ran past, laughing and chasing the rhythm of their own lives. Elderly women haggled softly over goods, their voices carrying the authority of age and experience. Amma clutched a small cloth in her hand, pretending to help, but mostly observing. Her heart pulsed with a mixture of fear and admiration, caught between the wave of respect and the longing for gentler moments with her mother. Abina said suddenly, not harshly this time, "Come here, hold the tray." She handed her daughter a small platter, heavy with fried treats. "Be careful. One mistake, and all this work is wasted." Amma nodded solemnly, holding the tray as if it were a sacred gift. Each movement was careful, each step measured, yet her eyes never left her mother's face. In that quiet moment, the chaos of the city faded into the background, leaving only the bond between mother and daughter, a bond forged from love, discipline, and survival. The drums in the market grew louder, a heartbeat of the city echoing through the alleys. Abina straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. The aroma of fried delicacies lingered, wrapping the street in a familiar warmth. For a fleeting moment the city, with all its noise and bustle, seemed to pause, witnessing the delicate balance of love, duty, and tradition playing out at a small stall in the heart of a modern African neighborhood. Amma smiled faintly, her small hand brushing a crumb from the tray. In her heart, she knew the lessons of the morning would stay with her forever, harsh, fragrant, and filled with the unspoken wisdom of her mother's love. The narrow alleys of the city came alive as the sun peeked over the rooftops. Between towering modern buildings, the streets buzzed with life. Vendors set up their carts, calling out in sing-song voices, hawking fruits, bread, and fragrant spices. The sound of drums from a distant market mingled with the honking of cars and the chatter of neighbors, weaving together the old and the new in a single, living rhythm. At the corner of a busy street, A small stall stood, humble yet commanding attention. Behind it, Abina worked with steady hands, flipping golden dough and arranging trays of steaming delicacies. Each movement was precise, a testament to years of practice and dedication. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned every face that approached, every child that lingered nearby. Respect was demanded, not just for the food she prepared, but for the order she maintained in her small world. Alma, her daughter, lingered at the edge of the stall, her small hands clasped together. She watched her mother, wide-eyed and careful not to disturb the rhythm that kept their world balanced. "Mother," she whispered, voice trembling, "may I help?" Abina's gaze softened just slightly, but her tone remained firm. "Alma, your hands must learn to work, but pat." Alma nodded, stepping closer, her eyes tracing every flick of her mother's wrist, every tilt of her head. The aroma of fried dough and spices wrapped around her like a warm blanket, grounding her amidst the bustling chaos. The city roared around them, but here at the stall, a small world unfolded, where every action carried weight and every glance held meaning. Customers approached, drawn by the golden treats and the air thick with the scent of tradition. "2 plates, please," one man said, handing over coins that glinted in the morning sun. Abina moved with grace, balancing trays and exchanging small smiles, her strictness softened only by fleeting moments of warmth. Children from the neighborhood wandered close, giggling and nudging each other, yet they slowed as they met Abina's stern eyes. Even in play, the weight of respect lingered, a silent lesson passed down through gestures rather than words. Alma's heart swelled with pride and fear, understanding that the world demanded both obedience and courage. The stall itself felt alive, a microcosm of the community around it. Every sound, smell, and movement reflected the blend of tradition and modernity. The sizzling of oil became a heartbeat, the rhythmic clatter of coins a drumbeat of responsibility, the scent of food a memory of generations past. Abina's labor was more than survival. It was an act of love, discipline, and the preservation of heritage. Alma finally stepped forward, holding a small tray as carefully as she could. "Mother," she said softly, "I will carry this without spilling." Abina's eyes softened for the briefest of moments. "Then do not falter, Alma. The work is heavy, but it teaches strength." In that small pause, the city's noise seemed to fade. The aroma of fried delicacies lingered in the air, wrapping around mother and daughter like a bridge between generations. The alley, the stall, and the bustling streets beyond became more than a backdrop. They became a stage where tradition, discipline, and love danced together in silent harmony. Alma carried the tray, her small hand steady, her eyes lifted toward her mother. Abina watched, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips, knowing that in each careful step, her daughter learned the lessons of life, resilience, respect, and the quiet power of love that spoke louder than any word. The morning unfolded with its usual chaos. Yet here at the stall, time seemed to bend, a moment of learning, of growth, and of the unspoken bond between mother and daughter. The city would roar on, but this small corner held the heartbeat of family, the scent of tradition, and the promise of stories yet to be told. Alma moved silently along the edge of the stall, her small feet careful not to disturb the rhythm of her mother's work. Each flip of golden dough, each sprinkle of spice, held her attention as though it were a story being told without words. The smell of fried delicacies wrapped around her, warm and comforting, carrying memories of laughter, song, and family. Her eyes darted between the customers, her mother, and the busy alley. She noticed how a neighbor's brow furrowed as they observed her mother's strict movements. She heard the whispers of vendors, the chatter of children weaving through the stalls, and the soft scolding of elders nearby. Every glance, every hushed word seemed to carry meaning, judgment, or expectation, pressing invisibly against her small shoulders. Alma's fingers brushed against the wooden edge of the stall as she leaned closer to watch her mother work. "Mother," she whispered softly, barely louder than the sizzling oil, "do they always watch us so closely?" Abina's hands paused mid-flip, dough suspended in the air. Her gaze softened for just a heartbeat as she looked at her daughter. "The world watches, Alma, not because it wishes to harm, but because it wishes to see what we become. You must learn to carry yourself with care." Alma swallowed hard, tried to understand. Fear mingled with curiosity, a tight knot in her chest. She wanted to step forward to help, but the weight of observation made her hesitant. Every neighbor, every passerby, seemed to silently judge whether she would obey, whether she would falter. A basket of fruit clattered nearby as a boy ran past, laughing with the carefree spirit of childhood. Alma's gaze followed him, a small pang of longing for freedom tugging at her heart. Then she looked back at her mother. Abina's movements were precise, disciplined, her strict gaze never leaving the stall. Yet there was a rhythm to her work, almost like a dance, a silent lesson being passed from mother to child. "Why must I always watch and wait, mother?" Alma asked again, her voice trembling. "Why can I not try?" Abina's hands never stopped their work, but her eyes softened. "Because, my child, one misstep in this world can ripple farther than you imagine. Watch, learn, and when the time is right, you will act." Alma nodded slowly, though her heart ached with the tension between obedience and a desire to express herself. She noticed the neighbor's subtle movements, the tilt of a head, the shift of a hand, silent messages that reminded her that the world's eyes were upon her. The vendors continued their calls. The drums of the distant market beat like the pulse of the city, and the smell of fried treats wove through every alleyway, binding tradition with the present moment. In that quiet observation, Alma began to understand. Each glance and gesture, every silent judgment, was a thread in the fabric of life, teaching her about respect, patience, and the weight of responsibility. And as she stood there, small and still, she realized that learning to watch was as powerful as any action she might take. The morning sun climbed higher, glinting off the trays of golden delicacies, and the city's noise pulsed around the stall. Alma's fear softened slightly, replaced by a cautious curiosity, a readiness to absorb the lessons of both her mother and the world beyond. In that moment, the small girl and her mother shared a silent understanding, a bond woven not only from love, but from the wisdom passed down through generations, echoing the heartbeat of their community and the timeless rhythm of African life. The morning air was thick with a mingling sense of tradition and the rush of modern life. The smell of frying dough and spices spiraled through the streets, weaving a familiar story of home and heritage. It drifted through narrow alleys, curling around high-rise buildings, insisting that even amidst the city's chaos, some things, some smells, some lessons never fade. Abina moved behind her small stall with careful precision. Each flip of a golden delicacy, each sprinkle of spice, was a gesture honed by years of practice and discipline. Her hands worked tirelessly, almost in rhythm with the heartbeat of the city itself, and her eyes never strayed from the customers or the children watching from the edges. There was a sharpness in her gaze, a firmness that demanded respect, but beneath it lay a quiet love, hidden yet unwavering. The clash of modern sounds, the blaring horns, the chatter of hurried pedestrians, the grinding engines of buses, created a discordant melody that pressed against the comforting aroma of Abina's cooking. To many it was noise, but to Alma, the little girl perched nearby, it was a lesson. Life was a balance of chaos and calm, tradition and progress, fear and courage. Alma inhaled the scent deeply, letting it wrap around her like a protective cloak. She noticed the subtle way passers-by lingered near the stall, their eyes darting between mother and daughter, observing, judging, silently weighing every movement. Some smiled at the sight of the mother's skill. Others whispered among themselves, curious about the tension that hung in the air like a shadow. "Mother," Alma said softly, almost afraid to speak over the sizzling oil, "does the smell always follow us like this?" Abina glanced at her daughter without stopping her work. "The smell is our voice, Alma. Even when words fail, it speaks. It tells the world who we are, where we come from, and the care we take in what we do." Alma's eyes widened as she looked at the golden treats arranged on trays, each one gleaming under the morning sun. "So, everyone sees us in the food we make?" "Yes," Abina said, her voice firm but not unkind. "The food carries our story. Every hand that touches it, every heart that tastes it, knows a little of our life. That is why we must do it well." Customers drifted by, pausing to savor the aroma, tasting the food with quiet appreciation. Some offered a small nod of respect. Others exchanged a whispered comment about the mother's skill or the child's careful watch. The stall had become more than a place to buy food. It was a stage for life itself, a microcosm of the community's values, where discipline, tradition, and love were as present as the sizzling oil and spice dough. Alma shifted slightly, stepping closer to her mother, her small hand hovering over the edge of the tray as if to help, yet not daring to interfere. She watched the subtle dance of Abina's hands, the careful arrangement of each dish, the way her mother's eyes scanned the street, commanding both attention and respect. "Mother," she whispered, "will the city always feel so loud against the smell of our food?" Abina finally looked at her daughter fully, her expression softening for a brief moment. "The city will roar, my child, but our story, the work, the smell, the care, will always be stronger than the noise. That is a lesson you must carry. Our heritage, our care, and our love speak louder than any clamor of the streets." Alma nodded slowly, her heart catching the weight of those words. The aroma of the fried delicacies swirled around her, binding the lessons of the past with the reality of the present. She understood, in that quiet moment, that every smell, every gesture, every glance was part of the story being told, a story she was beginning to learn how to carry herself. The morning sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the tray of treats. The city's noise continued, but within the small stall, a rhythm of life persisted, a rhythm of care, tradition, and the silent, enduring bond between mother and daughter, a heartbeat as steady and vital as the aroma that lingered in the streets, reminding all who passed that heritage and love could endure even in the loudest, busiest corners of the world. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long, golden shadows across the alleyways where modern high-rises met old, worn walls of neighborhood. The small stall hummed with life. Abina moved with practiced precision, arranging golden, fried delicacies on trays, each one a piece of her care and discipline. Her eyes scanned the street constantly, sharp, alert, commanding respect without raising her voice. Alma lingered close to the edge of the stall, small hands folded in front of her. She felt the weight of eyes upon them. Across the street, elders leaned on walking sticks, murmuring advice to younger neighbors. Their voices, quiet yet heavy with judgment, floated across the air. Children mimicked the movements of their mothers and Abina, laughing softly, unaware that their play was also a lesson in observation. "See, Alma," Abina said without looking up, "life is always watching. Every step, every gesture is seen and remembered." Alma nodded, swallowing the nervous lump in her throat. She could feel the invisible pressure of the community pressing on her tiny shoulders. Even a slip of the tray, a stumble, or a careless glance could invite murmurs, judgments, or disapproval. The weight of tradition, of communal expectation, was heavy, yet it was a force meant to guide, to teach, and preserve what mattered most. A group of neighbors gathered briefly near the corner, whispering among themselves. "She's strict, yes, but her children will grow with wisdom," one said softly. "Abina's hands teach more than words ever could," another added. Alma overheard these words and felt a flicker of pride, but her fear of failure persisted. A small breeze carried the scent of fried dough, warm and comforting, through the alley. It was a smell that told stories of ancestors, of patience, of resilience. It reminded Alma that she was part of a chain, a lineage that valued diligence, respect, and care. She stepped closer to her mother, adjusting the small apron that hung around her neck, trying to mimic Abina's movements without error. "Careful with that one, Alma." Abina's voice rang clear, but not unkind. "One mistake, and the story changes. You must learn to move with purpose." Alma's hand shook slightly, but she steadied herself. She carefully placed a golden piece onto a tray, her eyes scanning her mother's for approval. The elders' whispers, the children's mimicry, and the silent gaze of neighbors all weighed on her, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering the lesson hidden in her mother's every action. That observation was a form of strength, that respect was earned through careful, deliberate acts, and that tradition was alive in every small gesture. "Good," Abina said, a flicker of warmth softening her stern gaze. "See? The world watches, Alma, but you have the power to show it who you are, if only you move with care." Alma smiled faintly, a mix of relief and pride warming her chest. She understood that the eyes of the community were not merely judgmental. They were the guardians of wisdom, echoing the unspoken rules of life. teaching patience, respect, and responsibility. The bustling city, with its sounds of engines, voices, and distant drums, continued around them, but in the small world of the stall, a quiet rhythm of tradition and guidance persisted, shaping the girl who watched and learned. Alma smiled faintly, a mix of relief and pride warming her chest. She understood that the eyes of the community were not merely judgmental. They were the guardians of wisdom, echoing the unspoken rules of life, teaching patience, respect, and responsibility. The bustling city, with its sounds of engines, voices, and distant drums, continued around them, but in the small world of the stall, a quiet rhythm of tradition and guidance persisted, shaping the girl who watched and learned. Alma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of observation, yet embracing it as part of her learning. She was small, yes, but already beginning to understand the power of attention, of careful action, and invisible guidance to the community, a lesson as old as the streets themselves, passed down through generations in the silent language of African storytelling. Alma's small fingers trembled as she tried to arrange the golden treats on the tray, just as her mother had taught her. One piece slipped slightly, tilting on the edge, and she froze, aware of the eyes around them, the elders leaning on their walking sticks, the children mimicking from afar, and neighbors silently judging every move. Alma, Abina's voice cut through the bustling sounds of the street, firm yet layered with care. Careful. One wrong move can change everything. Watch closely, and do not let haste betray you. Alma's heart thumped. She lowered her gaze, noticing how her mother's hands moved with a rhythm that seemed both strict and gentle. Abina adjusted the tilted piece, her fingers guiding Alma's without a word, then pulled back slightly, giving the girl a chance to correct the mistake herself. This is not just about food, Alma, Abina continued, her voice steady. It is about life. Every action carries weight. Obedience, patience, resilience. These are the gifts that will carry you far. Learn them well. Alma nodded, swallowing hard. She felt the invisible pressure of expectation pressing against her chest. Yet in her mother's careful correction, she sensed love, not cruelty. The smell of fried dough and spices filled the alley, wrapping around them like a protective cloak, grounding Alma as she tried again. Abina moved continuously, tending to customers, arranging trays, exchanging coins, and speaking softly to those around her. Her gestures were precise. The tilt of her head, the careful sweep of a hand, the stern look that softened only for a heartbeat. Each movement was a lesson, a silent story passed from mother to daughter, teaching more than words ever could. A neighbor approached, offering a small smile. "Your hands teach well, Abina," she said quietly. "Even the child watches and learns." Abina did not look up. "Yes," she said, her voice firm, "but learning requires effort and respect. Alma, watch and do. The world sees all, but rewards those who act with care." Alma's small hand steadied. She placed each piece with care, her eyes fixed on the tray. Every slip corrected, every gesture mirrored from her mother, became a lesson in resilience. Around them, the street continued its chaos. The shouting of vendors, the distant hum of cars, the chatter of children, but in the small stall, time seemed to slow. Here, the lessons of tradition and discipline wove together, echoing the heartbeat of the family, the community, and generations past. A young boy ran past, knocking lightly against the stall, and Alma flinched. Abina's gaze followed, sharp and quick, but she did not scold. Instead, she leaned slightly toward her daughter and whispered, "The world will disturb your path, Alma. Stand steady. Learn to bend without breaking." Alma inhaled the comforting smell of the fried treats, feeling a quiet courage rise within her. The small stall, vibrant and alive, had become a stage for more than food. It was a stage for learning patience, observing life, respecting tradition, and finding strength in care and discipline. The morning light glinted off the trays of golden delicacies. Abina moved on, attending to a customer, but her eyes never left Alma. In that brief moment, mother and daughter shared a silent understanding, a bond built on guidance, love, and the unspoken moral lessons of African life. Alma knew that each careful movement, each observed gesture, was a step toward learning not only to serve food, but to navigate the world with wisdom, respect, and resilience. Alma's small shoulders tensed as her mother's voice rang sharply across the stall. The words, firm and unwavering, felt like a sudden gust of wind that rattled her heart. She lowered her gaze to the tray of golden delicacies, the fried dough shimmering under the morning sun, and whispered silently, "Mother, please, forgive me." Abina's hands moved with precision. Yet there was a tightness in her fingers, a stiffness in her posture that Alma had learned to read as both care and warning. "Alma," Abina said, her voice steady but heavy, "this is not the place for hesitation. Every action carries weight. Watch carefully. Learn quickly." The girl flinched at the tone, her eyes glistening with a mix of fear and confusion. Around them, the street hummed with the life of the city. The call of vendors, the rumble of distant engines, the laughter of children weaving through narrow alleys. But above all, Alma could feel the weight of her mother's gaze pressing down, sharp as the edge of a knife. Whispers floated through the alley. Neighbors leaned slightly on their door frames or appeared from behind curtains, murmuring in soft voices. "The child fears her mother," one said. "But she will learn respect in time," another replied. Their words, though quiet, carried the invisible weight of community judgment, as if every passerby were a guardian of tradition and morality. Alma clenched her small fists, the smell of fried dough and spices enveloping her like a familiar cloak, a reminder that amidst fear and discipline, there was still comfort, still love. She took a slow breath and tried again, adjusting a tray with trembling hands. Abina's stern gaze never left her. "Patience, Alma. Obedience, care, resilience. You must carry these, even when it is difficult. Life will demand them." Alma's eyes darted to the shadows in the alleyways, where the shapes of old walls and narrow corridors seemed to whisper warnings of failure. Every sound, the distant drum of the market, the hum of car horns, the soft scuff of feet, felt amplified. She felt the invisible eyes of neighbors, the elders, and even the children, all witnessing, judging, silently guiding her toward lessons she did not yet fully understand. She whispered again, barely audible, "I am trying, Mother. I promise." Abina's lips pressed into a thin line, but her hands softened slightly, guiding Alma's small movements. "Trying is not enough. You must act with care. Observe, learn, and act. That is how you survive and grow in this world." Alma's chest rose and fell as she tried to steady herself. The alley seemed to close in around the stall, the shadows lengthening as the morning moved toward noon. Every glance from her mother, every subtle gesture, the tilt of a head, the tightening of a jaw, the shift of a hand, felt like a test, a moral lesson wrapped in daily routine. A small breeze stirred the fried dough scent, reminding Alma that tradition and heritage were not just in words or discipline. They were alive in the smell of food, the rhythm of the city, and the careful, deliberate actions of her mother. She lifted her eyes toward Abina, and for a fleeting moment, their gazes locked. No words were spoken, but a silent understanding passed between them. A promise that obedience and love could coexist, that fear could teach without breaking, and that even amidst tension, the bond between mother and child remained unbroken. The neighbors whispered again, their voices fading as life in the alley surged forward. Alma's small hand steadied, and though her heart still raced, she felt the first spark of resilience ignite within her, a quiet flame that would guide her through the lessons of both the street and the world beyond. The sun climbed higher, casting its golden glow over the bustling streets where towering buildings met the narrow alleys of the old neighborhood. The stall sat humbly in the midst of this urban rhythm, a small island of tradition and care. Abina moved with her usual precision, flipping golden fritters and arranging trays, but her eyes softened briefly as they met Alma's. Alma, small and careful, watched every motion of her mother, learning the unspoken rules of the world. The fear that had clung to her earlier was tempered by fleeting moments of warmth. Abina reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Alma's ear, her fingers gentle for only a heartbeat before she returned to the rhythm of work. "Here," Abina whispered, pressing a small piece of fried dough into Alma's hand. "Eat quickly. Strength will help you endure." Alma's lips curved into a shy smile. That single act of kindness carried more weight than the stern words that followed every small mistake. Around them, life continued unabated. Vendors called out their goods. Children played near the alley walls, and neighbors leaned against doorframes, murmuring observations about discipline, care, and the balance between love and authority. Abina's hands worked tirelessly, yet she paused now and then to place a protective arm around Amma as a passing cart rattled too close. The girl felt both the strictness and the tenderness of her mother, two forces that shaped her understanding of the world. Amma, Abina said quietly, glancing at the young girl, "Do you see? Life is a balance. Strength and kindness must walk together, like drum beats in the rhythm of our stories. Without one, the other falters." Amma nodded, feeling the warmth in her chest. She understood that love could coexist with correction, that discipline was not absence of care, and that survival required both sharp eyes and a soft heart. From the corner of the alley, an elder nodded approvingly. "She teaches more than food," he murmured to a neighbor. "She teaches patience, respect, and the ways of life." Amma's hands moved more confidently now, placing the golden fritters with care and precision. Every glance shared with her mother, every subtle gesture, a gentle touch, a passing smile, a guiding hand, carried unspoken lessons. The stall became more than a place of work. It was a microcosm of life itself, a space where hardship, love, and survival intertwined in the rhythm of the day. The scent of fried dough mingled with the sounds of the city, car horns, footsteps, laughter, creating a sensory tapestry that told of both the old and the new. Abina's voice rose above it all occasionally, gentle yet firm, reminding Amma that life demanded attention, resilience, and care. Amma looked at her mother and whispered softly, "I understand, mother. I will try my best." Abina's stern eyes softened once more, just long enough for Amma to catch the warmth there. She nodded, returning to her work, and Amma felt a quiet courage bloom within her. She realized that the world outside might be harsh and demanding, but within the lessons of the stall, she could grow strong, guided by love and tradition, learning to face the city with both wisdom and heart. The small alley seemed to hum in harmony with their bond, strictness and tenderness, discipline and care, challenge and protection, all woven together, like a story passed down through generations. And Amma, holding her mother's silent guidance close, knew she was part of that story, ready to carry it forward with patience, respect, and the strength of her heritage. The morning rush began to ease, the clamor of carts, engines, and voices blending into a steady rhythm. Abina wiped her hands on her apron, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself a pause. Amma, small and cautious, watched her mother's every movement, sensing the unspoken rules that governed both the stall and life itself. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them, a shared recognition of the day's struggles and the bond that kept them anchored. Abina's stern features softened for just an instant, and Amma's heart leapt at the warmth hidden behind the strict gaze. The smells of fried dough and spiced delicacies lingered in the air, weaving through the narrow alley and mixing with the distant hum of the city. High-rise buildings cast long shadows over the traditional neighborhood, a stark reminder of the balance between modern life and ancestral ways. Yet, in this small stall, tradition held strong, embodied in every gesture and glance. Abina reached over and gently adjusted Amma's apron, a subtle touch that spoke louder than any words. "You've learned much today," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of care and expectation. "But remember, courage and patience walk hand in hand. One without the other will falter.